All right, Shalom. Before I get started, I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Rakak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who taught me this truth. Shalom to the hopeful elect. And before we get into this lesson here, okay, the Khazar theory or just the facts, all right? And before we get started again, copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, okay, fair use. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use purposes. Fair use for purposes such as criticism, commenting, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. All right, so let's get into it. Okay, again, the Khazar theory or just the facts. All right.
The Jewish people, we are the chosen people. The Jews are the chosen people, and it is so apparent when you're in Israel, the Jewish land, and you're with the Jewish people of Israel, how magical we are. That's biblical shit, okay? That's biblical. You can't debate any of that. I want to make sure everybody knows that the Jews are the chosen people. And that's no disrespect to anything or anybody else. But the Jews are the chosen people, and Israel is ancient Judean Jewish land. We, the Jewish people, we are the chosen people. The Jews are the chosen people. And it is so apparent when you're in Israel, the Jewish land, and you're with the Jewish people of Israel, how magical we are. That's biblical shit, okay? That's biblical. You can't debate any of that. I want to make sure everybody knows that the Jews are the chosen people. And that's no disrespect to anything or anybody else. But the Jews are the chosen people, and Israel is ancient Judean Jewish land.
Bear with me.
And I thought I'd go and have a look at Jewish literature to see what they say about their origins. And here we see three quotes. And the first is in the 1925 Jewish Encyclopedia, which says that Esau, Edom, is modern Jewry. And of course, this is contrary to what most people believe today, which is that the Jews are God's chosen people because they are the Israelites. But here, the Jewish literature is saying that they are actually from the tribe of Edom, not the tribe of Israel. In the Jewish Almanac in 1980, it says, strictly speaking, it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew or to call a contemporary Jew an Israelite or Hebrew. And that's because, truthfully speaking, they're not the Hebrews or Israelites, they are really the Edomites. And also, we see here in the Encyclopedia Judaica that Edomite Jews began to call themselves Hebrews and Israelites in 1860.
All right, so let's get into it. All right, you heard these two clips. All right, so let's pull this up. This came out February 26, 2026. All right, this is from, make this bigger here. All right, hold on one second. Okay, so this article is from clevelandjewishnews.com. All right. The headline reads, it says, why was Tucker Carlson pushing for DNA testing for the Jays? What to know about the Khazar theory that anti-Semites can't shake. All right, so we're going to show you in this lesson that it's not a theory, it's facts. Okay, so let's read on here. It says during Tucker Carlson's interview last week with Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, both men made considerable waves with their takes on history and theology. Huckabee sparked a diplomatic row by citing the Bible to argue that Israel had a divine right to claim all of the Middle East, right? He argued that Israel had a divine right to claim all of the Middle East, even though he didn't back by doing it so politically. But Carson's own interpretation of Israeli sovereignty was also notable, as the far-right pundit insisted that Israelis should undergo genetic testing to determine if they have a rightful claim to the land. Right? It says, quote, "Why don't we do genetic testing on everybody in the land and find out who Abraham's descendants are? Who Abram's descendants are?" Carlson asked Huckabee at one point, using the name Abraham used before he made a covenant with the Most High to become the first Jew. All right. It says, quote, "It's really simple. We've cracked the human genome. We can do that. Why don't we do that?" At another point, Carlson singled out Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu specifically as an illegitimate Israeli. All right, check that out. At another point, Carlson singled out Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu specifically as an illegitimate Israeli. All right, real quick, as we've been saying, okay, because we dealt with two Amalekites at camp yesterday, so everything's spiritual, right? Jeremiah 49:10. "But I have made Esau bare. I have uncovered his secret places," man. All right, everything is being brought out. Okay, his secret councils, the deep state secret governments, who these people really are. All right, the practices and rituals they do behind the scenes, everything, man. All right, 2026 has been the year, man. "But I have made Esau bare. I have uncovered his secret places, and he should not be able to hide himself." Okay, he can't hide himself no more, man. Okay, he's been identified as the biblical Edomites, and he can't get away from it. And he should not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren and his neighbors, and he is not. All right, this is where we at in prophecy. Okay, so as we were reading, what did it say again? Let me go back. Okay, he said that he was an illegitimate Israeli, right? Let me add one more. All right, what was it? Zechariah. Okay, Zechariah 9:6. It says, "And a bastard shall dwell in Ashdod." All right, so you have an illegitimate son, a bastard. All right, dwelling in Jerusalem, meaning these are not the people of the Most High, man. All right, and as the world is finding out, they don't fit the prophecies, and they're being questioned all over the place, man. All right, "And the bastard shall dwell in Ashdod, and I will cut off the pride of the Philistines." Let's go back. Okay, and we're actually going to play a little bit of the video as well. Okay, and I didn't want this to be too long, but see how the spirit move. Anyway, let's go back to the read here. It says, quote, what you're saying is that certain people have a title to a highly contested region. They own it in some deep sense, he told Huckabee. So I think it's fair to ask, who are they? And how do we know? So the current prime minister's ancestors weren't from here within recorded history. He has no deed. Bibi Netanyahu on one side, his family's from Poland. They're from Eastern Europe. So how do we know he has a connection to the people who God promised the land to? Okay. The line of questioning made little sense to many Jewish listeners who understand Judaism as a blend of religion, ethnicity, and community, which converts have always been accepted. For Jay's listeners too, The idea of tracing bloodlines is often associated with Nazis who chose their victims based on how many Jewish ancestors they had. Both Carlson's critics and supporters across ideological spectrum who have agreed with his views on Israel understood what he was getting at. They identified his line of questioning as a variation of the Khazar theory, the belief that Ashkenazi Jays, like not a Jew, are genetically descended from a Turkic minority that converted to Judaism in the Middle Ages rather from the 12 tribes of Israel. Quote, the people currently occupying Israel are Khazarian Turks. Far-right pundit Candace Owens, a promoter of many anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, wrote on X. He has zero ancestral connection to the land. He's Polish. The far-left influencer Sean King wrote on X about not a Jew in praise of Carlson's interview. His real last name is Milikowski, right? Is there any more? All right, so we read that here, right? So let's actually get to the video, and we'll get to the main point in a minute. I just want to go through all of this to show you that it's over for these people, man. All right, so let's get to the video here. All right, this came out 5 days ago on the Tucker Carlson network. It says, who are God's chosen people? Tucker waits patiently as Mike Huckabee scrambles. Hilarious.
Who are the people? Who are the modern? Yes, who are the descendants? So we know, and I believe, and I agree with you as a Christian, that God promised this land from modern day Iraq to modern day Egypt to this people, the Jews, to Abram's, actually not to Abram's descendants, as it says in Genesis 15. Who are his descendants now, and how do we know who they are?
I think they're the Jews, and we know who they are because they've always been a Jewish people. There has been an unbroken line of Jewish people, and they've lived in this land for 3,800 years. Sometimes not very many of them, because they were chased out all over the world. They were hunted down. They were almost annihilated during the Holocaust. They came back. To this day, Tucker, they represent, you know how many Jews there are in the whole world?
Please,
No,
I understand. Look, first of all, the greatest genocide of Jews no one ever mentions was by the Romans, where they were literally banned from Jerusalem for 500 years.
Yeah, of course.
And it's all awful. And I'm opposed to all of that. I'm opposed to mass killing of anybody, period. I'm opposed to
hear
killing.
you say that.
I mean it.
Yeah.
And I hope
I believe that.
on that.
I believe that.
My question is, and it's not a bumper sticker answer, it's a sincere answer, how do we know? Because what you're saying is that certain people have a title to a highly contested region. They own it in some deep sense. So I think it's fair to ask, who are they and how do we know? So the current prime minister's ancestors weren't from here within recorded history. He has no deed. Bibi Netanyahu, on one side, his family's from Poland. They're from Eastern Europe. So how do we know that he has a connection to the people who God promised the land to, Abram's descendants? How do we know that?
Well, if you take the genealogies that come not only from the Old, but the New Testament, you see that there is a historical connection through the entirety of the Old and the New Testament that details the Jewish connection to this.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again.
Bear with me.
This land.
Does that include Bibi's
indisputable.
family? How do we know that if his family
If they were
comes here,
scattered,
but how do we know it's the same people?
how do you-
No, why is that crazy? If you say to me,
if they speak the same language, if they worship the same God, if they follow the same Bible, if they follow the same cultures and traditions, and they always pray next year in Jerusalem, and they pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and they pray facing toward Jerusalem, does that not give you a little bit of a clue as to who they are?
let's go through those things, because I would like to have a rational. This is the conversation I've wanted. Bless you. Thank you for doing this. Let's just go through those things.
Okay.
So one of the things I admire most about Israel is they resurrected a dead language in 1948. Good for them.
Well, they really didn't resurrect it. It was existent.
Okay, I'm not. That's not.
But it is
that's a
the
compliment. I'm not slighting.
No. But
anybody.
it is the first time in all of human history that a language has survived through this length of time. It's. I would call it. You might not, but I would call it a miracle. One of many.
Okay,
that you can attribute to this
I
language.
think it's wonderful as someone who loves language. Netanyahu's parents did not speak Hebrew. Okay. They didn't live in this region. Netanyahu, the founders of this country, were mostly secular. Some of them were avowed atheists. They were not praying for the peace of Jerusalem. They weren't praying at all because they didn't believe in God. There's no genealogy linking their families to the people of this land 3,000 years ago. They're not.
Yeah, they don't believe in the Messiah, man. All right, they're not the people. Hold on, man. Let me just get a scripture real quick. Okay. And we'll make the main point going into the so-called Khazarian theory in 1 second. All right, but I did want to just play a little bit of that clip. Because, as I said before, Tucker Carlson, he plays games. He knows what it is. This is Job 21. And verse 13. Job 21 and 13. They spend their days in wealth, in a moment go down to the grave. Verse 14. Therefore they say unto the Most High, depart from us, for we desire not the knowledge of thy ways. All right. And this is the spirit of the Edomite, man. All right. Habakkuk 2, was it 2 and 4? All right. His spirit is not upright in him. Okay. For we desire not the knowledge of thy ways. Have you read the Talmud? Okay. Have you seen the practices that they keep? Okay. It's pure abomination, man. Pure wickedness. Verse 15. What is the Almighty that we should serve him? And what profit should we have if we pray unto him? So there's no way in hell that these are the people. Okay. Verse 16. Lo, their good is not in their hand. The counsel of the wicked is far from me. All right. The Most High is not dealing with these people. These are not the true biblical Israelites whatsoever. All right. And again, this is the controversy that's going on all across the planet. This is what everybody's talking about. This is why they're ready to ban the internet. Okay, they're making laws to come down on anyone that's questioning and criticizing these particular people. All right. Verse 17, how oft is the candle of the wicked put out, and how oft cometh their destruction upon them? Yahweh Shemel Shai distributeth sorrows in his anger. There as stubble before the wind, and as chaff that the storm carrieth away. Yeah, because the time has come where Esau is going to be destroyed, man. And the Most High is about to use World War III to get rid of him. Nuclear destruction. All right. And when Yahweh Shai comes with the heavenly hosts, with the chariots, man. It says, for the Most High layeth up his iniquity for his children. He rewardeth him, and he should know it. His eyes shall see his destruction. Right? His eyes shall see his destruction, and he shall drink of the wrath of the Almighty. See? Let's go back.
So how do we know, since they didn't share a language, they didn't share a religion, they had no religion whatsoever, how do we know that they had a right to come here from Eastern Europe and
but they were scattered.
Take the land?
They were scattered to Eastern Europe. They were scattered all over the world. There were many in Ethiopia. They were in Russia. They were in Poland. They were throughout Asia. Jews were all over the place, but they were still Jews. But they were still Jews.
Okay, so then let me get to the nub of the question, since again, a lot is at stake. A lot of money is at stake. Land is very valuable. Israel has a lot of resources. By the way, if you're accused of a crime, you can hide here. That's a pretty good passport to have. It's a good thing, right? So who's entitled to it? I don't understand, and you're very discouraged in the United States from asking this question for some reason. It's a totally rational
No, I'm not
question.
discouraged.
No, you're not discouraging.
Yeah.
Others do. You're like the only person I can have this conversation with. Everyone will be like, shut up, Nazi. It's a foundational question. Are you speaking of an ethnic group or a religious group?
Well, I think you're looking at, for many people, it is religious. There are people who may not have a deep religious connection to Judaism, but they're still Jews.
Okay, so it's an ethnic category.
It is ethnic, but it is also religious. It is rooted in religion. You can't take it out of it. Now, that means
then how can an atheist?
Well, I will tell you this. There are some people who say, I'm Christian. They never go to church. They never pray. They never read their Bible. They don't tithe.
But they're not entitled to citizenship on the basis of that.
Well,
they're
but
not
I'm saying
entitled
that
to.
they still call themselves Christian, even though they identify in that way.
Here's the difference. You're saying that people who have this identification have a deed to a huge chunk of land on the Mediterranean. Okay. So there's, it's a right. You keep telling me it's a right. And so it's totally fair to say, if you come to my house and say, I've got the title to your house, I get to ask, may I see it? Where'd you get it? And that's exactly what happened here. People from Europe, Eastern Europe came here, in a lot of cases, atheists, and kicked out a lot of people who lived here.
Land.
Well, but
they did not just throw people out.
They bought a lot of land. There's no question about that.
They did buy a lot of land.
But they also, in 1948, kicked out a lot of people.
In the war.
It was a war. I agree.
Yeah.
I'm not want to relitigate the history. I'm just saying it's a fact.
Okay.
Including a lot of Christians wound up fleeing, and they lost their homes, and they've never been allowed back. And all of this was justified on the basis of this identity that is the ticket to the right that you keep referring to. So my question is very simple. I'm going to wait patiently for an answer. Does this right derive from religious affiliation or from genetics?
And I would say it's both. But I would also say that when you said the Christians were kicked out, Tucker, Christianity is growing in Israel.
Okay.
And there is a big lie that goes out there. But no, let me finish this, because I keep hearing that Christians are really not treated well in Israel. That's a lie.
Well, there are lots of different. There are lots of different.
There were 34,000 Christians in Israel in 1948. There are 184,000 Christians here today.
And by Israel, what are you counting?
You talking about the land?
What territory are you counting? I'm counting about Israel proper? Or are you counting
about Israel
the West Bank as well and Gaza? I mean, what do you, when you say Israel, those numbers apply to what landmass?
It would be in Israel proper.
Okay.
There are 184,000. Now, I'll tell you where Christians are not doing very well. They're not doing very well in the Muslim-controlled countries. There's almost no Christians in Qatar, for example, except those who live in the Christian ghetto, who are the service workers.
I'm sorry. Look, I don't want to argue with you. There are many more Christians in Qatar than there are in Israel.
That's not true.
It actually is true. And I refer you to Wikipedia, Mr. Ambassador.
Wikipedia.
I refer you to the government of Qatar, the government of Israel. These are knowable facts. I'm
in Jordan,
by the way,
numbers are down. In Syria, the numbers are down. In Lebanon, the numbers are down. I'm just telling you that
about twice as many Christians.
But they live in the enclave. They are not native Qataris.
Okay, we're mixing so many different categories here. I'm just saying I get things wrong all the time. You've just gotten something wrong, and I think it's important to acknowledge it. There are many more Christians in Qatar than there are in Israel. Fact.
How many?
Now you caught me. I don't know. I can look at my phone, but I was just there, and there are many more. Like, whatever. But I just want to get to the point that forms the basis of this whole conversation, which is who has a right to the land?
Yeah.
And you said it's a mixture of religion and ethnicity. Because as I noted, and you agree, many of the founders, maybe the majority of the founders of modern Israel, did not believe in God at all. So they were not religious Jews. They weren't religious at all. They were atheists. They said they were atheists. I believe them.
Yeah. So you can watch the rest of that. All right. Just know that these Edomites are finished, right? So anyway, let's just get to the point here. Again, the Khazarian theory or just the facts. Them niggas cut the stream. Them niggas cut the stream. Them niggas done cut the stream. Are you serious? Hold on, man. Hey, can y'all still hear me? Yo, they cut the stream. They cut the stream. Why? Damn. Hey, that's crazy.